Welcome back to the channel, guys. This video is looking at cryptocurrency millionaires, how to get to that position. I want to use my superannuation fund as an example where I was buying in, my mentality, my thoughts, my emotions at that time to get it to where it is now at over $300,000, and show you some of the current charts, some of the current altcoins which are potentially setting up in that position. If you love the sound of that, you know what to do. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel with that bell notification turned on your mobile phones as well. And we dive into the video from this point. The first thing I want to show you was my superannuation account. 200,000 in ETH, you can see down here, 100,000 in Bitcoin, and some cash left over. Now I've been buying ETH on the way down at 4,000 US, 3,000 US. I'll keep buying at 2,000, 1,000 if we get there. There is going to be critical points where I will possibly sell out and just say this thing is over. The market isn't doing what it should do, but at this point, I don't think we'll get there. That's based on what I was looking at last time around when I was buying ETH at 80 bucks, 100 bucks, 200, $300, even all the way up to $700 before we took off into that peak of $4,000. So the point of the video today is cryptocurrency millionaires are made in these periods. The reason they're made in these periods is because there is better risk reward. If we're buying at lower prices and we believe there is a higher reward, then of course there's going to be bigger multiples. But the majority of people aren't here in these times. And I remember making videos, you can scroll back onto my channel, talking about it with friends and family, telling them now's a pretty good time to be probably getting into cryptocurrency. Bitcoin was at 5,000, 10,000, ETH was at 100 bucks to 300 bucks. No one really wanted to listen at the time. And maybe we're going through one of those periods right now in 2022 where we have this sideways chop. The markets have been explosive since that COVID crash low, and we just can't go up in a straight line forever. As much as the new people who bought in November, unfortunately, want it to. And so this might be that period where we get that churn, that chop. So the main things we want to look out for are where these lows come in. Now, I know I sound like a broken record unless you're just hearing me for the first time, but these are the major levels. Bitcoin, 28K, and of course it looks like we'll probably take out the 39K low now. Reason being is we have not seen some solid bounces. Good case scenario, if we push up from this point, everyone's put as much as they want into the market to get those multiples on the upside. Then we start to make higher lows and higher highs. We want to take out some support and resistance. 49K is a good level, but of course we need to start from the lows. Taking out these highs, 44, jumping back above the 46, which was the support, and then of course 49. But we've talked about this multiple times on the channel already, and if you jump into the chart, you can start to see these levels. We'll continue to track this on the chart, of course, so make sure you are following the channel, subscribe, bell notification icon down below. So these levels, and in terms of getting to a cryptocurrency millionaire status, as I just mentioned, from this superannuation fund, it's at about 300K from here. So it only needs to triple from this point to get to that $1 million status. But the main thing that we want is cash flow. You could make $1 million, but what are you going to do with $1 million from that point? Most people don't know what they want to do with it. They say they do, they want the $1 million, but it's not what it's about at the end of the day. This is about getting that freedom that you want in your life to go and do the things you want to do. But the journey is the most important part, and this is part of the journey. The downside, this is the hopium and the mental and emotional support that we all need in the market when we go through these periods. I remember going through this for multiple months, and of course it's 2.5 years when we look back on it now. We see the market pump up and you think this is it, we're ready to take off. Yet did we see it deflate and pump and deflate and pump, and then we finally get some of the major breakouts, but this took some time. Now, I'm not saying we're going to take 3 years. I'm not saying that we're in a bear market. Structurally, the bear market starts when we break this January, May, June, July lows of about $28,000. But calling something a bear or a bull market isn't going to put any money in our accounts. What's going to put money in our accounts is taking a chunk, really, really solid chunk, out of the middle. And I think this chunk still has a lot further to go. I think we could probably get closer to the 120 mark. And of course there are calls out there for 180, 200, 300. I honestly don't care because this is my own analysis and I need to stick to what I think is what has the potential to happen from this point. And so my chunk I want to take is somewhere, if I average it out, probably sitting at around 8, 7, 10 grand. all the way up to around that $120,000-ish, because that gives me a nice 10x on Bitcoin. And this is for my superannuation fund. So this is my retirement fund that I'm willing to hold in there for years to come. So from this point, it is possible that we see the market fade and start to test some of the lower levels again. So maybe we get some ups and downs in the middle before it fades out again. People are going to say, well, this is just, what is this based off? Let's have a look at some of the downsides. So from where we currently are, we have a 30% drop, and to the 20K is another 50 odd percent. From the top of the $69,000 top to the 28K lows is about 57%. Call it a 60 as a round number. Back down to the $20,000 level, which was the previous peak and the level before we broke out, that gives us about a 70% drop on Bitcoin. So if we are to repeat a similar pattern, but not exactly, because nothing is exact, it tends to rhyme, but it's never exact. If we get back to the 20K, that's a 70% loss. So the thing we're looking at here, and what I was doing while I was buying up Bitcoin and Ethereum in my super fund, starting with 26K, blowing it up to about 450K, now currently sitting at around 300K, is I'm just looking at the risk reward. What's the downside? From 42 grand, what's the downside? Potentially 50% to some of these levels. And I'm picking those levels because they're major support and resistance levels. Sure, it could pull up at 24, which then is a little less. It could pull up above 28 or 29K, which then only makes it a downside of 20 to 30%. The upside is something that you need to look at. What could be that upside target? And if we take this back to the major low at around, it was 3.5 or 3,100, a few $100 isn't going to make too much of a difference. But if we look at the upside, 1.5 times is 100 grand, 2 times 130 grand. So I'm picking a level in between there. And I'm looking at these as being a support and resistance level where the market potentially gives me a doubling of those previous tops. The total market cap is something important to keep an eye on as well. Now, if you've been following, we know the levels are 2.07 trillion. Market has been rejected from that point at the moment. What we want to see here is that 1.8 definitely hold up and then start to test those higher levels again. So 2.07 is the first level to overcome, 2.17, and then this major level I'm looking at is around 2.5 trillion. So the best case scenario is we hold up from here, everyone's loaded up, they have no more money they want to put in the market, and we start to climb higher and make higher lows, breaking those levels, taking our time and extending this out so that we get bigger moves to the upside through 2022, late 2022 and into 2023. At the moment, the market looks like it wants to head lower. We're not seeing big moves up. We're just seeing small bounces, and you can see these bounces are getting less and less on the way down. And so eventually it may take out the lows at this point. And what that will look like, probably some moves up and down, which the market always does. And then we start to fade out and die, and the market gets quiet. The best thing, the point to really take note of, is if that market fades out and dies, potentially above the 50% level, potentially above the previous support levels, and the market goes very quiet, boring, no one's talking about it anymore, or very little, then that looks like it could be a bottom, similar to what happened back in 2018, 19, 20. So I'm basically using this from my experience, what I'm looking at from my experience to now, to get the better entries and hit that cryptocurrency millionaire status the easiest way. It is far easier to be buying the lows and then waiting it out. A lot of people get in when the market is too hot, they get burnt, they try it again, they get burnt again, and then they basically leave the market because they got nothing left to do. They're emotionally destroyed. If you can manage your emotions through this period, buying on the breakouts, seeing it run up, seeing it drop, seeing it run up and drop, if you can manage your emotions through that period and hang on for the bigger ride, you are going to make it. Ethereum, same deal. It's going to be a very similar chart because the total market cap is primarily Bitcoin and ETH. About 50 to 60% of this market cap is made up of Bitcoin and ETH. So ETH is going to be the same, which is why I was able to be buying ETH in my retirement fund, in my superannuation fund, through this period between $80 and around $320. And I remember the last ones I bought were around $700 before I started to buy again at these levels and on the way down. but I don't want to destroy my portfolio by buying way too much at the top. I want to be buying on the levels on the way down. So get into some big accumulation, ride it up, and then when the market crashes again, you start to buy a bit more, depending on where your outlook is. And of course, my outlook is much further up this scale, potentially around 7, 8K, 9K, the same levels that I've been talking about all 2021. I still see much further upside to this market, regardless of, like I said earlier, whether it's a bull or a bear. I want to be buying in the bear because less people are here, more fear is around. We can see in the market, we've been extremely fearful for quite some time, and that's going to give me a better risk reward. Solana, same sort of thing. You can see the same pattern happening time and time again. Solana moved up to $5 from its lows of around 50 cents. It dropped 80%, moved again, dropped about 60%, moved again. So if we're looking at another 80% drop from the highs, we could look at prices somewhere around $50. So 260 to 50. $50 turns out quite well, somewhere around 40 to $50, because it comes up with the previous all-time highs. This has got nothing to do with the fundamentals, where I think they're bad or good projects. I'm just looking technically at what we've seen in the past and have a bit of a roadmap moving forward, especially if the support levels continue to break down. Then you just have to look for the next support levels, $80, 60 odd dollars, and then down lower where we saw the previous highs. Speaking of the 80% drop, sushi, you can see we had a 80% drop here. The market has attempted, 50% rejected, again 50% rejected. You can see here on a much smaller time frame, and we've started to head lower. So what you'd want to see from here is this low to hold, form another base, and start to move again. Doesn't mean that this will be the low, but it looks like it's trying, and it's been rejected at this point in time. So it needs to hold this low level, and it's basically a battle of tug of war. Is it going to hold? Can we retest the highs? Is it going to hold the lows? Can it break through the highs this time? Similar sort of drops here on YFI. And you may have noticed that I'm looking at these in DeFi, because looking at this pattern, cryptocurrency, we went through 2019, 2020, and the market was building up here for Bitcoin and ETH. Whereas for DeFi, it was pumping in 2020. We went from some lows in that summer of 2020 and pumped all the way up into about September. Then it faded, and it moved again in 2021, but the values didn't move that well against Bitcoin. Things like YFI, Link, Aave, the USD value moved really well, but it didn't move against Bitcoin. So the point of this is we're looking for projects which have gone through a major wind up, so basically like an accumulation period, and we want to start to see those markets break. That will give us the cryptocurrency millionaire status in some time, 12 months, 24 months, whatever it may be. If you've got the patience and you can withstand and stomach the ups and downs and just stick to your plans, you'll get there. I hope you found some value from that video. It is a little different to what I normally produce, but I always like to hear how people think and what happened in the past, what they were thinking and doing to get to where they are today. That helps me out the most by learning from others, their mistakes, what they've done right, and what I can use from that in my own plans moving forward. If you enjoyed it, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, plenty more of this along our journey. I'll see you guys at the next video. Till then, have more fun to get more done.